Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Military Mutterings, where I, Jack Fletcher, and my good friend
Me, Kevin Jansen.
shall be discussing a rather intriguing little, well, not even that little, but rather intriguing series of vehicles known as Siebel ferries. And I have definitely said that incorrectly because I am not German.
Well, I think it's just fine. I'm
Yes,
Dutch, and even I would say Siebel ferry, so...
fair enough. Well, these are, in essence, armed flak transports. So, Kevin, could you talk us through some of the prototypes?
Yes, now... So, the origins of this barge sort of came from I think it was a higher-up sort of engineer. He thought to himself, well, what if I take two sort of barge hulls, have one connected deck on top of it, and just go from there? So what you see before you is the first prototype. Now these had four 75 horsepower, I think truck engines in the lower hulls, and then so it's just that is two engines per hull, and then on top of that, because the top speed with those engines was absolutely horrible, I think it was 4 knots. He thought to himself, well, we've got some spare aircraft engines, we can put those on the deck, and that's what you see in front of you right now. One source.
I
What?
think the Japanese did that as well, didn't they?
Yeah, the Japanese had some, I think were crashed Helldivers, and they used those engine cowlings on some patrol boats.
Brilliant.
But one source actually says that a third one could also be plopped on, so I guess that one would go into the middle, but I can't imagine the noise and the danger you would have with constant spinning propellers like that. But the
Could you
funny thing
imagine if?
is, now the funny thing
Sorry.
is, with these aircraft engines, they would actually go from 4 knots up to 8 to 10 knots. So it was actually
Oh,
quite a significant improvement.
can I say? Could you imagine if they chucked on three Rolls-Royce Meteor engines,
Well, just like
1800 additional horsepower? You might get an extra knot out of that.
yeah, one of the B-29 engines or like a post-war turboprop. That's just
Yes.
the noise out of that, though. My God.
You know, I want to know if they ever considered putting on one of the UMO engines
But maybe,
onto one
but
of these.
I think the problems with those is they were in such limited numbers. And I
Hmm.
think if they did have a spare engine, no one would give it to some guy making a flag barge. Well, not even a flag barge, just a barge. Why would you use a Umo engine on a barge like this?
Rocket barge.
But the first prototype, I think it's the one you see before you, was denied, simply because it was awful. So the engineer actually went on to improve his design with a slightly smaller deck in between the two hulls. I think the hulls also were slightly bigger, but I think he kept the aircraft engines because, funny enough, because this is a very square and very wide vehicle, its turning circle was awful. So with the aircraft engines, by turning off the left one and having the right one at full RPMs, they could actually turn much faster, which I think is pretty funny actually.
It actually reminds me a bit of how the Whippet used to turn. Because it was
Yeah.
powered by two separate engines, they would power down one and then power up the other to make it turn.
Well, you could also say the same about that Russian sort of ironclad. It was a completely round hull design, and the rudder was
Mm,
so ineffective. They were just better off having the left engines go in one direction than the right engines in the other. They would turn them faster. I think so
mm,
fast so that the crew would actually get seasick.
good lord. Well, that's a way to wake up the sailors.
Yeah, exactly. Just start spinning around, fire up the engines, max RPM.
Listen, the enemy can't land shots on you if they have no idea where you're going. Even better if you have no idea where you're going.
Exactly. But now we come to this one. I'm not sure if this is actually still the prototype, but I'm just gonna call it the prototype because you can still see the aircraft engines at the back. But if you compare the two of the skip back, you can see that there is quite a size difference between the two. This one's a sort of more bare bones, smaller, and this one is sort of more bulkier, much more stronger. But as we can see, this one is actually carrying some trucks around as well. So this is sort of going into that transport side of the ferries here. But the main thing
And not
is, we've got an 88 at the front.
Yeah, so I was going to say not only that, but they're starting to explore the fact that this thing could be armed, and as we'll see later down the line, they could definitely be armed.
If I'm not mistaken, if I look at the upper superstructure, I see two barrels poking out. This could be two additional 20 mils, if I'm going to be honest. So, a single 88, two 20 mils, that is not bad at all for your first little flag barge.
It's not bad at all. Now, if we go on to the next,
Yes,
we have them
so...
in their intended roles.
Yeah, so these were... them being ferries, they of course have to be able to carry all sorts of things. And I've seen some photos of these carrying, I think, two Panzer IIIs and a Tiger 1 all at the same time, so they were very good at their job. But as we can see on the left photo, they can just carry a crap ton of trucks. I see fuel barrels, I see all sorts of equipment. But more importantly, I also see two flak-feeling 20mm mounts at the back near the superstructure. So these were still armed, they could defend themselves. And the one on the right, I think I see a whole bunch of wood logs or whatever that might be, more equipment, and we also see a single flak-feeling at the top there. Also, what I quite like about them, the superstructure seems to change every single time. Some of them have them on the rear, some of them have them in the middle, some are very wide. It's I love that about these. Yeah, I love that about these vehicles. Nothing is consistent. They're just sort of botching these vehicles together as they go, and they all differ slightly. I love that.
They are just a complete mismatch, an assortment of stuff in a desperate attempt to make a transport, and it worked. That's the thing that amazes me, is that these things did their job well.
Well, even better so, these were very stable platforms because they were so large and wide. They were planned to be used on the, well, proposed invasion of Britain by the Germans. And I can sort of see why. They can carry a lot of stuff. If you just have a fleet of 10 of these, think about how... If a single one can carry two Panzer IIIs and a Tiger, you can ship out an entire tank battalion on just a couple of these flak barges. Now, I keep saying flak barges, but ferries, that's what I mean to say. And then you have a couple of flak barges to protect your little ferry convoy.
And then you have, as history would have actually happened, you'd then have the entire, well, a lot of British capital ships coming in, and then it's just a case of, oh dear.
HMS Hood, alternate history, HMS Hood gets ammo-racked by an 88 from a flak barge.
That wouldn't surprise me, to be fair.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Like, they could use that Umo engine to make it fly, and then it could ammo-rack straight down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of ammo-racking the Hood, I guess these ones sort of get to it.
Now, as well as being brilliant for transport, these are also great for hosting a number of other things. Now, on the very left, we have one with a lot of 20mm quad. I think that you could have up to 4 on
yeah,
these.
I believe it's 4.
As well as an additional, I think, 37mm in near the superstructure.
Yeah, I think I can see a barrel poking out.
Possibly, or either that, or that's some other equipment. Just some bad bit of photograph. Then you have the middle, where we have 3 flak 88mm guns, as well as a couple of additional 20mm cannon. And then on the final picture, on the far right, we have a couple of, I think, 37mm guns, or 20mm guns, and flak 88mm guns. So these things... You know, if Britain had a wider canal, these things could just go down them and tear up like entire divisions purely on the basis. What? Not divisions? No, platoons. Platoons, maybe a battalion. I wouldn't say an entire division, but they could definitely do some serious damage. They are essentially mobile artillery platforms.
Yeah. And remember what I just said about the superstructure being different on every single one? Well, I wasn't lying.
Yes.
That 20mm one just has a central tower, so to say. Then the middle one
the other
has...
two have got castles.
Yeah, but like the middle one seems to be much more bulky. with the,
Mm.
the sort of the thingies on the sides being still completely protected, but the one on the right is just extra decks, so to say.
Mm. Yes. And something I will say is that despite okay, aside from the SF-40s as they are known militarily, there were other barges that were able to host guns that the Germans used. In fact, one of them, I forget the name of it, could host a pair of 105 mm guns.
I
So
think they
you
were
essentially
called
got
AFD1 and then D2 and D3. I think those were the.
yeah. So
We should
essentially,
probably make a video on those too, because I've seen plenty of
mm,
photos where they all differ too in weaponry and superstructure and.
yeah. So essentially, these barges, you could turn something from a barge into something like a small destroyer.
Yeah. I'm honestly surprised I haven't seen one of these barges with 405 mm guns or something along those lines. That would be
Mm,
terrifying.
that would be terrifying, and also probably quite impractical given their weight.
Yeah,
But look
probably.
at how these barely fit on the 88s. Could you imagine trying that with 405s?
Or maybe
You'd
just
need a
like
third
just
barge.
change the superstructure again and then just have two 105s in the front. I think that'll be a much better option. That'll
Mm,
probably
yeah.
offset the weight a bit too.
Mm,
Also,
right.
something I must say, we can see it slightly on the one on the right, that some of these had some brilliant camouflage schemes as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I
I
mean,
think
either that or the crews just got really bored.
I forgot the name, but wasn't it like sort of razzle dazzle or whatever? Like those just those straight lines in different vibrant colors.
I've honestly got no idea.
Yeah, but we usually don't advertise games, but I will advertise War Thunder for this one because they have the one you see on the left and the one you see on the right in the game, and they are a nightmare to fight against, and they are a lot of fun to play with. So honestly,
Yes,
go check it
well,
out.
yes, unless of course you are a freshier, in which you're going to eat them
Oh
for
yeah,
breakfast.
they they are easier to kill. I have noticed, but back in the
They
day they
still
were
are nightmares.
unkillable. Yeah, well, back in the day they
Yeah.
were actually unkillable.
Yeah. And then modern 40 mm cannons were added. Anyway, enough of our little tangent about a game we wish we were sponsored by.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day, yes.
Notice
Well,
us, Gaijin.
yes. Well, on that note, do you have anything else to add, Jeff?
Not really, only that I absolutely love these vehicles.
Yes, I think they're brilliant. And I suppose on that note, join us next time as we go over, well, let's just say, a rather unfortunate event from 1942. Until next time, goodbye.
See ya.